Whenever a founder starts a new company, they define their North Star, what it is that guides them. It is the guiding light for everything the company does. For us too, we have to know clearly what it is that guides our actions, the values that we hold deeply.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of Absolute Faith Within.
Welcome to Absolute Faith Within, hosted by Kiera Williams.
And there, binauhan. Yes, welcome back, everyone, to the episode 2 of Absolute Faith Within. How are you feeling today, Kara?
I am feeling excited and hopeful that we are continuing on this journey, and I'm just really excited and curious to see what will come.
Yes, me too. And especially for today's episode, I'm actually very excited about our topic for today. So, what is our topic today, Kara?
Today, we will be studying values, the things that we hold most dear in our lives, the things that drive us to action. Just as the literal North Star provides direction and helps us to stay on course, so does our inner North Star. It's our inner compass, the part of us that knows our passion, purpose, and life direction. And this is from Kiara a psychotherapist and medical writer from the Health Psych. So, Erica, could you tell me a little bit about how one can define or identify their North Star?
Yes, we can identify our North Star by reflecting on questions such as how should I shape my life? Or what direction should I pursue? What are my values and beliefs that should guide my life path? I think it's very important to know this because once we find a North Star, then we know where we are headed. And I think having North Star also gives a sense of purpose and fulfillment or a sense of direction for each one of us. And I think that is something that a lot of people truly want because a lot of times we tend to live our lives, but we don't know where we are headed. So, how about we start with you, Kira? What is your North Star?
Well, that I feel like that question, that aim is always it can be ever changing, but I think one of the most consistent things throughout my life is service. I really have always felt that I have a purpose to really serve others and to help people and inspire people. However, that has changed as I have grown in my faith toward God. When I was younger, I just viewed it simply as, all of the philanthropic efforts that I could do, starting a charity or, you know, public speaking, whatever it may be. But I think fundamentally, knowing what I know about eternal life is that ultimately heaven, God is my North Star. And I guess more practically, the Word of God, the Bible, that really, pushes me and inspired me. And the Bible provides a set of clear, tenets and instructions for how we should live our lives, but also stories. And so whenever I think about the actions that I take, the things that I do, I think, is this something that brings me closer to heaven? And of course, a part of that is just, how I commune with God, but very practically when it comes to my daily life, how I treat my neighbors, how I love others, even those who don't necessarily treat me well, because we know, sometimes in the world you can be kind and nice and people will step on you. But I think being able to consistently be kind and to push myself to just, check myself, check in, like, am I being authentic? But also, is my authentic aligned with the values that I've set myself for myself, which may include, living faithfully towards God, being, kind and caring and serving towards others, and so on. And we'll talk a little bit more specifically about different values and how they can be shown and lived out in our lives. What about you, Erica?
Yeah, but I love your answer. I think as a church girl, as a church girl, that's saying that sounds really funny. But, as someone who also believes in God, as a Christian, I think right now, my North Star is I think that the life I live right now, who I am, or will be in the coming years, will be a testimony of God's love. That the actions that I take
Mm.
right now can radiate or give off God's love. I guess that's what I think as my North Star that really helps me navigate my life right now. That the actions, the words, or the choices that I make, I really hope that I'm able to demonstrate God's love to others. So, and I think it is very important because a lot of times as we live our lives, and you mentioned it in the last video, we're all very cynical people. But for me right now, really, I think I want to be able to live my life where my life itself would become a testimony for God and people would be able to see that. So I think that's what my North Star is.
That's so beautiful, Erica. And I really love how it is centered on exuding God's love. And love is such a big and sensitive topic. We'll be talking about that later in the season. But um, yeah, I think, when we think about the core of life, our purpose, it does come down to love. And of course, that love, it may not be what we think, but yeah, I think if we can all really exude love, this world would be better, and especially exuding God's love.
Right. No, you're right. Since you kind of touched on it already, Sarah, what are the values that you hold most dear in your lives as we talk about our North Star?
The biggest one, definitely service. I think throughout my life, I've always enjoyed, volunteering, lending a helping hand wherever I can. When I was 5 years old, I already had a list of charities that I wanted to start when I got
Wow.
older. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna have and a big family home. It's not an orphanage, but it's just a home where people can go. I'll be feeding the homeless, saving the
Right.
animals. Like I was so ambitious. I'm like, I'm just gonna solve everything. World hunger, animal abuse, everything. Um,
Wow.
but even to my, high school years, like I started this thing called Project Encouragement, which was this
Uh-huh.
kind of global movement to get people to be more empathetic, to think positively, and take care of people those who are different from us. And even just now in my adulthood, basic things like volunteering at soup kitchens or whatever it may be. I think that's something service is a value that I can certainly say consistently has guided my values.
Right.
And on the topic of consistency, I think being consistent is definitely something I value because I grew up in a somewhat of an unstable home. So I think just being able to be consistent with my words and actions, and that's something that I'm very much working on. But also in just, finding people who really live out the lives that they preach, because there's so many moving variables in life, but I think having a consistent that you can always trust never changes. And honestly, God is the only being that can truly fulfill that and be consistent. But
Honestly, God is the
yeah,
only consistent one.
yes, truly. I think definitely just growth. I think that's
Mm.
one thing that I can say is it's really important to me to never be stagnant, but to always be striving for better. I see this often in people that I, love and care about, and just really, it's really common just as a part of the human condition is that people they get stuck where they are. They kind of have this limited mindset that they can never change, or that, the change is so hard that it's just not worth pursuing. But we should always be growing. And that's funny. We actually had a sermon last night that talked about changing for the better. Like,
Right.
if you don't change, then you're going to be stuck how you are, and your life may even get worse because the world around you is always changing. But if we're always striving to change ourselves for the better, like our values, those can be something that's solid, but our actions, the things around us, our habits, these are things that we can constantly be changing for the better. And so I really, it's really important to me to constantly be growing and, be able to take feedback and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I really love those three values that you mentioned. And I think even with the last thing that you said when we talk about change, it's really important for us to have that growth. And at the same time, people also need to learn and truly realize that, we do have the power to change ourselves. Yeah, like we're not hopeless human beings, but at the same time, we have to really learn that we have to be able to put in the action and the effort if we want to change things. And it's not just like a passive hope. Because I think a lot of times people want to change, but they don't try to put in effort into it. Or sometimes they feel like what you said, they do have some limited mindset. We do have that mindset sometimes. And that's, I think, where the growth mindset have to come in. That, it's important for us to consistently grow as we move forward. And I think as we make those efforts and changes, even though we don't see the result right away, it gives us hope, right? It gives us hope that as much as we try, we'll start seeing the progress, we'll start seeing the results. And I think that also gives us some joy. But I guess that's one thing that I also really value is really trying and doing our best rather than just hoping. Because I really feel like hoping without doing anything sounds a little delusional to me. Maybe that's a little too much, but I feel like hope itself comes when we try and really take action on what we hope for. But yeah, and I think the other thing that I value too is learning how to turn our crisis into an opportunity. And that's something I also learned from church. And I think that I really value the most in my life right now because I feel like because of that, I'm able to find growth, strength, and learning even in the most challenging situations that I am in, instead of being overwhelmed or being defeated by the crisis that I'm facing. I'm able to see them as chances for me to grow and really develop even resiliency. So I think learning how to see the crisis that we face into an opportunity for us to grow is one of the things that I really value the most in my life as well. And I think that's very important because a lot of times once we face some challenges, we think of it as a setback rather than a chance for us to learn or grow from it. And especially, I think for my career too, there are a lot of times when it's just so hard. Teaching is not an easy job. And even the job itself caused a lot of job insecurity because of economical issues that's happening right now. So having that mindset is, I think, very important. I also have a third one, but let me think about it right now. How are you doing, Kara?
I'm doing well. In my mind, I'm like, yes, Erica, spit those bars. Uh, but yeah, what you're saying about, turning challenges into opportunities, it really reminds me of this quote from our pastor where he
Uh-huh.
said, If there's a stone in front of you, it either becomes a stepping stone or it's a stumbling stone or stumbling block. And so,
Right.
like, so much of what we do in our lives is like mindset, like
It is.
how we think determines how we act. And it continues. It's a loop, a continuous cycle.
Yes. One thing I really learned from our pastor too, I really value the most too is just being thankful in whatever circumstances we are in. Because like what you said, it's all about mindset. So whatever I'm facing, no matter how hard it is, whether I'm in my lowest, I try my best to still be able to see the positive things and give thanks to God for all of it. Because a lot of times I think once we face some difficulties in our life, we just hyper focus on it and we forget about the bigger picture, and we forget to give thanks on a lot of things. And I think being thankful also change our mindset. It's not about. Have you heard the term toxic positivity?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's not like that because I feel like sometimes when I talk about this, that term just keeps coming to mind. But I think it's just learning to look at things differently and still learning how to be thankful even in the hardest, situation. And having those mentality really helped me get through so much in my life and still be able to smile through it all. And I think that's very important. But yeah, and I think just like what you said earlier, Kira, about, service. I think that's one thing too. Growing up, I think I always had the heart to serve people. I mean, I never thought about charity when I was 5 years old. But if there was a memorable thing that I could remember in my childhood, I think I was on my way home. And you know how like in the Philippines, oh yeah, by the way, I was actually born and raised in the Philippines. But at that time, I remember there was this, I think she was a mom, but then she came to me and she was asking for money and all that. I think I was in sixth grade. And obviously, I don't have money or anything, but whenever I look back at the time, I'm very surprised of what I did because I remember I went home. I literally packed all the food we had at home. My parents didn't even know that I was doing that. And I packed all the food. And then I remember I had those, what do you call it? Like a piggy bank. I
Oh,
remember breaking it
yeah.
at that time, putting it in a plastic bag. And then I gave it all to her. So what she was saying is that she's trying to go home, but she didn't have money. She didn't have food. And then I think she lost her job, you know, and as a sixth grader at the time, I don't know what happened. I was just so moved and I just wanted to help her and give everything that I had at the time. And hopefully it wasn't a scam, right? But that's what I did then. And whenever we had some calamity, we always had flooding happening in the Philippines. I remember my family would always make food and we'll bring it to church and feed the people who have their houses flooded. So they had to go to church and camp there for some days until they recovered from the flood. But yeah, I think I'm happy to see actually right now that both of us have heart for service. I think it's a great thing. Maybe we should do some charity later.
No,
Create our
we
own foundation.
all right, coming soon.
Coming soon.
Q4, Q4 2024 or Q1 2025. And
Q1. No, but definitely though, I think if I could recall one more thing, when I was a kid, I think one thing that I always pray for, aside from being successful, happy, and I remember always praying for world peace. So I think I started doing that since I was in fourth grade until high school or college years. I would always pray for world peace and for everyone to just be loving to each other and to not have any wars. And looking back in retrospect, I'm like, wow, like right now, I'm not even praying so much for world peace. So good job to my younger self for doing that.
yeah,
But
and that's so beautiful. And honestly, I'm like, your prayer probably brought some peace. Like, people really like prayer is so powerful. It is, and that's another episode to come is really talking about the power of prayer, how to pray.
yes, but yeah, I think as we talked about the values, and I think our last thing here is really reflecting on it and how it evolved over time. Like for you, Kira, how do you think your values change over time? Or what was your values before and how is it right now?
I think fundamentally the things that I value have remained relatively consistent, but I think what those values are aimed towards has changed significantly
I love
because a
that.
lot, yeah, like I am a huge lover of people. Like I love people so much.
Well, good for you.
No, no, I share this because I think, when I was younger, I would really like go out of my way to, try to love and help people that would not value it, who would, put me down or, step on your heart. And there was actually, another sermon that we heard a couple of weeks ago was about you cannot please people's hearts. Like because we are so fickle and always changing as humans, it is impossible to fully satisfy each other's hearts. So our aim should be towards satisfying God's heart. And and so I think, with my values of service and growth, changing for the better and consistency and authenticity, I think these all before they were really aimed at people, helping people, you know, a lot of the times trying to be liked by people or even elevating the self by doing a lot of things. But
Mhm.
now I think I can genuinely say that when I do things, when I take action, my values really are about uh are an act of love towards God because,
Right.
and that still reflects, a love of people, because that's the thing. When we love God, all of the humanity, all of mankind in the world is contained within that. If I love God, like God is the creator of all people. And it's like, if I love God, then I will serve and love people. If I love God, then I will strive to make myself better in this body, in this life that God has given me. If I love God, then I will want to pursue consistency and order in my life. Whereas if I'm just trying to help people, then I can end up neglecting my own faith, or I may misunderstand them. And it's just like, it's really like everything is contained within,
Right.
loving and living for God. Whereas people, humans, unfortunately, our bodies are finite. And so if we don't
Right.
think about the spiritual and eternal things, then sometimes the lives that we live can end up being in vain. And of course, people can still benefit from the things that you did after you pass away, but sometimes the things that we do end up being in vain if our heart and our aims aren't in the right direction.
Wow. That's wow. I really love all that. And I think like what you said, the direction, it's really a matter. It's more like your intention, right? As we do things. I think that's so important. And now that you're doing it for God, I mean for me, now that I start focusing everything that I'm doing for God, I just have this sense of fulfillment and joy that if I just do this for myself or for other people, it's not the same thing.
Yes.
Like,
And how about yourself, Erica? How have your values changed over time?
yes. So I think just like you as well, I guess really that what we're aiming for really changed for me. Because when I was young, I used to really just focus on, yes, there is helping others, but I think I'm very focused on achieving success for myself. And aside from praying for world peace, one thing I always pray for actually is whatever I'm doing in the future, I hope I'm happy. I think that's one thing I've always prayed for when I was young. And fast forward to today, I just reflected right now that I truly found that happiness with God, that it's only God that has given me that true happiness. And right now, I just remembered a quote that our pastor said that happiness is happiness only when it lasts eternally. And I'm truly thankful because with everything that I'm doing right now, no matter how things get hard, and whether people hurt you or not, because I'm only looking at God and everything that I'm doing is for God. It really gives me the sense of fulfillment and joy and hope that I know I won't be able to get if I just focus on my own success, focus on people, or focus on the things that I want. But right now, I think it's very important, like what you said. Once you love God, you just love everything else because God loves everyone too. So you cannot help but when you love someone, you want to do things that will make them happy. So I think it's the same for us right now towards God because we love Him and we want to make Him happy. We're doing things voluntarily with joy, the things that we know would make Him happy and satisfied. And I think that's very important as well. But yeah, I think just looking back on how our values change, I'm very proud of both of us. I think it's so
Eh,
beautiful that we're able to live a life where our aim and direction is centered on God. And with that, we're able to live a more fulfilling life and a life where we actually grow towards, I guess, becoming the best version of ourselves, centering on what God's will is for us. Yeah. What did you think of today's
Amen.
episode, Kira?
I really enjoyed today's episode, especially reflecting on how I've grown as a person, but also the heart and the mind that I have, towards life, towards people, towards God. And
Right.
I think it's so important to reflect on your own transformations, because yeah, again, when it comes down to that limited mindset of thinking that you can't change or that it's hard. I think if we really reflected on our lives and where we were, 6 months ago, a year ago, let alone 10 years ago, 5 years ago, up until now, we'd be amazed at how much we've changed.
You're right. Yes, I totally agree with that. I'm also curious right now. Hopefully, we have people who's listening to us at this point. I wonder what their North Star is as well, right?
Yes, yeah, please, everyone, like, what is your North Star? Please write it in the comments if you're listening on YouTube, if you're on a podcast, just listening to the audio only, feel free to head over to our social pages and comment as well.
Yes. And maybe I want to end today, well, with help me with his name again, Fyodor
Oh,
Dostoevsky.
oh yeah. Oh, you guys, before this episode, we were like trying to pronounce names, and she was like, Who is this person?" She was like, at first she was like Theodore. No, I'm like Fyodor Dostoevsky. Like, and I don't even know if I said it right, but
No, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Yeah, my Filipino cannot. But anyway, he's a famous Russian novelist. He did say that the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. And I think that's very beautiful. It's really knowing the difference between existing and living. And once you have something to live for, it will completely change your life.
thank you so much. I think we've made it to the end of our episode. So if you enjoyed this, please give us a like, subscribe to our podcast. It's free. Find us at absolutefaithwithin.com or at absolutefaithwithin on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, Absolute Faith WI. What's next week? Erica, could you tell us?
Yes. Next week, we're going to talk about our thoughts. We're going to talk about mentality. How do you guys think in your life? Because thoughts determine our future. So if you're curious, please look out for our next episode of Absolute Faith Within.